She was crying at the bus stop, until a luxury car stopped and he said, "Get in. Before we explore all the details of this incredible story, tell us where you're following us from and the time. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss a thing, and let's embark on this journey together." She knew this would be one of those nights that carved itself into memory before it even ended. Eden Monroe Grant pressed her fingertips against the cold glass of the pharmacy window, watching the rain streak down in patterns that reminded her of tears she'd been holding back for weeks. The fluorescent lights above buzzed with that familiar electric hum that had become the soundtrack to her exhaustion. 11:47 p.m. 13 minutes left of another shift that felt like it had stolen pieces of her soul. "Eden," barked Mr. Hendricks from behind the prescription counter, his voice cutting through her momentary peace. "Customer at Register 3 needs help with insurance. And make it quick, we're not running a counseling service here." She straightened her white coat, feeling the weight of every hour she'd been on her feet. Her black sneakers had lost their cushioning months ago, but new ones weren't in the budget. Not when rent was due in 3 days, and her checking account was dancing dangerously close to overdraft fees. The customer, a middle-aged woman with puffy eyes and trembling hands, needed her migraine medication. Eden recognized the desperation, the way the woman's fingers drummed against the counter while waiting for the insurance to process. She'd seen that same anxiety in her own mirror too many times. "It's going to be okay," Eden said softly, her voice carrying a warmth that surprised even her. "I know waiting feels impossible when you're hurting." The woman's shoulders relaxed slightly. "Thank you for seeing me. Really seeing me." Eden's chest tightened. When was the last time someone had said that to her? The transaction finally went through, and Eden watched the woman disappear into the rainy night, clutching her small paper bag like a lifeline. She glanced at the clock. 11:59. "Eden, lock up the front and count Register 3, Hendricks called out, already gathering his things. "And don't forget to clean the blood pressure machine. Someone left it a mess." 1 minute. She had 1 minute left of this day, and he was still finding ways to squeeze more from her. She moved through her closing routine like a ghost, counting bills, wiping surfaces, checking locks. Her reflection in the pharmacy's glass doors showed a woman she barely recognized. When had her eyes become so hollow? When had her smile become something she only wore for customers? 12:15 a.m. Finally, Eden stepped out into the Atlanta night, and the cold air hit her like a slap of reality. She pulled her worn denim jacket tighter around her chest, the fabric soft from too many washes. Her phone was dead. Again. The cheap charger she'd bought last month had already started fraying. The bus stop was a block away. She walked slowly, her feet protesting every step. The rain had softened to a fine mist that seemed to hang in the air rather than fall, creating halos around the streetlights. 3 other people waited at the stop. A man in construction clothes scrolled through his phone. A teenager with earbuds stared at nothing. An elderly woman clutched a plastic grocery bag. None of them looked at each other. Atlanta's unspoken rule: we're all just trying to get through. Eden checked the bus schedule posted on the shelter's plastic wall. 22 minutes. The next bus wouldn't arrive for 22 minutes. She sat on the cold metal bench and felt something inside her chest crack. Maybe it was the exhaustion. Maybe it was the way Hendricks had spoken to her, like she was invisible. Maybe it was coming home to an empty apartment every night, eating microwave dinners while watching other people's lives unfold on her cracked phone screen. Or maybe it was the simple, devastating realization that she'd become exactly what she'd sworn she never would. Just another woman whose dreams had been worn down to survival. The first tear fell before she could stop it. Then another. Eden Monroe Grant, who hadn't cried in public since she was 12 years old, sat at a bus stop in the middle of the night and let herself break apart quietly. Her shoulders shook, but she made no sound. The rain mixed with her tears, and for a moment she wondered if anyone would even notice if she just disappeared. That's when the car pulled up. A sleek, dark sedan that looked like it belonged in a different world than hers. The engine purred softly as it idled at the curb. The passenger window rolled down with an expensive whisper. Eden looked up, wiping her face quickly with the back of her hand. The face that appeared in the window was familiar, handsome in that understated way that didn't try too hard. Concerned blue-gray eyes that she'd seen before, always polite, always respectful when he came into the pharmacy. Eden. Her name sounded different in his voice, like it mattered. She stared at him, rain-soaked and vulnerable, caught between embarrassment and curiosity. This was Callan. She'd rung up his prescriptions for months, Always professional, always brief. Allergy medication, vitamin D supplements. Once sleeping pills that he'd picked up with the kind of resignation she recognized. I'm waiting for the bus, she said, her voice smaller than she intended. I know, he said gently, but it's late, and it's raining, and... He paused, studying her face in the streetlight. You look like you could use a friend tonight. Friend. The word hung in the misty air between them. You don't have to, she started to say. I know I don't have to. His voice was soft but certain. I want to. If you'll let me. Eden looked at the empty street, then back at him, at the genuine concern in his eyes, at the way he was waiting for her answer instead of assuming she'd say yes. For the first time in months, someone was offering her a choice instead of demanding her compliance. Okay, she whispered. And as she stood up from that cold bench and walked toward his car, Eden had no idea that this single moment, this choice to trust a stranger's kindness, would unravel everything she thought she knew about herself, about love, and about the difference between existing and truly living. The car door closed behind her with a soft click, and suddenly the night felt full of possibilities she'd forgotten how to dream. The silence inside his car felt like the most comfortable thing Eden had experienced in months. Callan adjusted the heat without asking, and warm air began to chase away the chill that had settled into her bones. The leather seats were impossibly soft beneath her, and she found herself sinking into them like they were designed to hold tired souls. Classical music played softly from speakers she couldn't see, something with violins that seemed to understand the ache in her chest. What's your address? He asked, his voice careful not to break the fragile peace between them. Eden rattled off her apartment complex, then immediately felt embarrassed. Oakwood Gardens wasn't gardens at all, just a cluster of weathered buildings where the elevator only worked half the time, and someone was always playing music too loud on Tuesday nights. That's about 15 minutes from here, Callan said, pulling away from the curb. Perfect timing to beat the storm. She glanced at him as he drove. His hands were steady on the steering wheel, long fingers that looked like they'd never known manual labor. A Rolex caught the streetlight on his wrist, not flashy, just expensive in that quiet way that spoke of a different world entirely. You probably don't remember me, Eden said softly, watching raindrops race across her window. Eden Monroe Grant, he said without hesitation. You always ask customers if they have questions about their medication. You noticed when Mrs. Patterson's hands were shaking too much to open her pill bottle, and you found her an easier one. You remember people's names even when they don't wear name tags. Eden turned to stare at him, heat rising in her cheeks. You pay attention. Hard not to. He stopped at a red light and looked at her fully for the first time since she'd gotten in the car. You're the only person in that place who makes customers feel like human beings instead of transactions. Something twisted in her stomach. Not unpleasant, but unfamiliar. When was the last time someone had noticed her kindness instead of just expecting it? Bad night? He asked gently, as the light turned green. Eden let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. Bad month, maybe bad year. She paused. What about you? It's almost 1 a.m. and you're driving around Atlanta in a storm. Couldn't sleep. His jaw tightened slightly. I was driving back from the office. Left some files I needed for tomorrow's presentation. Today's presentation, technically. You work this late often? More often than I should. He glanced at her. What about you? Do you always work the closing shift? Someone has to. Eden shrugged. A night differential pays an extra $1.50 an hour. Adds up over time. Callan was quiet for a moment, and Eden wondered if she'd said too much. Rich people got uncomfortable when you talked about money, or the lack of it, but then he said, every $1.50 matters when you're building something. Building something? A life, a future, independence. He turned onto her street. I assume you're not planning to work pharmacy retail forever. Eden felt her defenses rising. What's wrong with pharmacy retail? Nothing. His voice was immediate, sincere. I just meant, you seem like someone with bigger dreams. Dreams are expensive, she said quietly. So is giving up on them. Eden studied his profile in the dashboard light. There was something about the way he said it, like he knew the weight of deferred dreams personally. What about you? She asked. Are you living your dream as a... She realized she had no idea what he actually did for work. Communications director for a tech startup called Vertex Solutions. He pulled into her apartment complex. And honestly, I'm not sure anymore. Not sure about what? Whether I'm building something meaningful or just existing efficiently. Eden felt something shift between them. This wasn't small talk anymore. Building 12, right side, she directed, pointing to her building. The exterior lights were out again, leaving the entrance in shadow. Callan parked but didn't immediately unlock the doors. "Can I ask you something?" Eden nodded. "That night last month when I came in for allergy medication? You asked if I was okay. Not about the prescription, about me." "Why?" Eden remembered. He'd looked exhausted, stressed, like he was carrying invisible weight. "You had this look, like you were drowning in plain sight." "I was." His admission hung in the air between them. 60-hour work weeks, sleeping 4 hours a night, living on coffee and anxiety. But you were the first person to notice. "People notice," Eden said softly. "They just don't know how to ask. Or they don't care enough to ask." Eden reached for the door handle, then stopped. "Callan? Yeah? Thank you for stopping, for seeing me tonight." He turned to face her fully. "Thank you for getting in, for trusting me." Their eyes met, and Eden felt something she hadn't experienced in so long she'd forgotten it existed, the electric possibility of connection with another human being. "Eden? Yeah? Would it be weird if I said I've been hoping for an excuse to have a real conversation with you?" Her heart did something complicated in her chest. "Would it be weird if I said I've been hoping someone would want to?" The rain had picked up again, drumming against the car roof like nature's percussion section. Eden knew she should get out, go upstairs to her empty apartment, heat up leftover takeout, and pretend this night had been like any other. Instead, she heard herself say, "Do you want to come up just for coffee? I have instant coffee." Callan smiled, the first real smile she'd seen from him. "I'd love some instant coffee." As they ran through the rain to her building entrance, Eden fumbled with her keys, her hands shaking slightly. Not from cold, but from the terrifying, wonderful realization that her life might be about to become something entirely different. "The elevator's broken," she said as they climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor. "Good," Callan said behind her. "I could use the exercise." "Apartment 3B, she said, unlocking her door. "Fair warning, it's not much." But as she flipped on the lights and saw her small space through his eyes, the second-hand furniture arranged with care, plants thriving on every windowsill, books stacked in neat piles because she couldn't afford proper shelves, Eden realized something important. This was her space, her sanctuary, and she wasn't ashamed of it. "It's perfect," Callan said, and the way he said it made her believe he meant it. As she moved toward the kitchen to make coffee, Eden caught sight of her reflection in the window. The woman looking back at her had bright eyes and flushed cheeks. She looked alive. She looked like someone who might just be worth getting to know. Eden's hands trembled slightly as she filled the electric kettle, hyper-aware of Callan's presence in her small kitchen. He stood near her tiny dining table, really just a card table with 2 mismatched chairs, studying the collection of succulents lined up on her windowsill. Each plant sat in a repurposed container, a chipped coffee mug, an old mason jar, a yogurt cup she'd decorated with colorful tape. "You have a gift with these," he said, gently touching the leaf of a jade plant that had grown thick and healthy under her care. "They're survivors," Eden replied, spooning instant coffee into 2 mugs. "They don't need much, just consistency. Like people, maybe." She paused, considering his words. "Some people, yeah." The kettle clicked off, and steam rose as she poured the water. The coffee wasn't fancy, just the generic brand from the grocery store markdown section, but she stirred it carefully, adding a splash of the vanilla creamer she allowed herself as one small luxury. "Sugar?" she asked. "Just black, thanks." She handed him the mug, her favorite one with a faded quote about kindness, and their fingers brushed briefly. The contact sent an unexpected warmth up her arm. "So," she said, settling into the chair across from him. The table was so small their knees almost touched. "Communications director, that sounds important." Callan wrapped his hands around the mug, using it to warm his fingers. "It sounds more important than it feels most days. I spend a lot of time crafting messages about innovation and disruption, but half the time I'm not sure we're actually helping anyone." "What does your company do?" "We develop software solutions for small businesses, inventory management, customer relations, that kind of thing." He took a sip of coffee and didn't make a face at the instant granules. "The idea is good, helping local businesses compete with big corporations. But somewhere between the boardroom presentations and investor meetings, it started feeling like we're just another tech company, looking for ways to monetize other people's struggles." Eden leaned back in her chair, studying him. "You sound like someone who cares too much in a job that rewards caring too little." He paused, considering. "That's exactly right." "How did you?" "Because I know what it feels like to have your empathy treated like a weakness." She traced the rim of her mug with her finger. Every day customers take their frustration out on me because their insurance won't cover their medication or because their prescription costs more than they expected, and I want to help, but the system isn't designed for helping. It's designed for processing. Do you want to do something else? The question hung in the air like an invitation to dream out loud. I used to want to be a social worker, Eden said quietly. Help families navigate systems, advocate for people who don't know how to advocate for themselves. But college is expensive, and by the time I finished paying for my mum's medical bills, she stopped, surprised at herself. She didn't usually share personal details with strangers, but Callan didn't feel like a stranger anymore. Your mum's okay now? He asked gently. She passed 3 years ago. Cancer. Eden's voice stayed steady, but her grip tightened on her mug. The treatments kept her alive an extra 18 months, but they also left me with debt that'll take another 5 years to pay off. I'm sorry. Thank you. She looked up at him. Most people get uncomfortable when I mention it. Death makes people awkward. My dad died when I was 25, Callan said. Heart attack. I know that feeling of watching people calculate what they should say. Something shifted between them, a recognition of shared loss, the kind that shapes you in ways that don't always show. What was he like? Eden asked. Demanding, successful, never quite satisfied with anything I accomplished. Callan's smile held no warmth. He built a marketing firm from nothing, worked 18-hour days, expected the same from everyone around him. When he died, I realized I'd been trying to prove myself to someone who was never going to be impressed. And now? Now I work 18-hour days and wonder if I'm becoming him. He laughed, but it sounded hollow. At least you're trying to help people. I'm optimizing profit margins. Eden reached across the small table and touched his hand briefly, just her fingertips against his knuckles. Maybe the question isn't whether you're becoming him. Maybe it's whether you're becoming who you want to be. Callan stared at her, and Eden felt heat rise in her cheeks. Who was she to give life advice? She was 28 years old, working retail, living paycheck to paycheck, but then he turned his hand palm up and caught her fingers in his. When's the last time someone asked you that question? He said. What question? Who you want to become? Eden felt her throat tighten. I don't remember. They sat in silence for a moment, hands loosely connected across the table. Outside, the rain had gentled to a steady patter against her window. The sound was comforting, like being tucked away from the world. Eden? This might sound crazy, but would you want to have dinner sometime? Like an actual dinner, not instant coffee at 1 in the morning. Eden's heart did that complicated dance again. You want to take me to dinner? I want to know more about you. I want to hear about the plants you save and the customers you remember and what you think about during those long shifts. He paused. I want to know what makes you laugh. I don't laugh much anymore, she admitted. Then maybe it's time to change that. Eden studied his face in the soft light from her kitchen lamp. This man with his expensive watch and his complicated job and his careful way of speaking, what did he see in her tired eyes and second-hand furniture? Okay, she said softly. Okay? Yes, I'd like to have dinner with you. Callan's smile transformed his entire face. Tomorrow? I mean, tonight technically, but tomorrow works. Eden grinned. I don't work until Thursday. Perfect. He squeezed her hand gently, then released it. I should probably let you get some sleep. They stood together, the small space making them closer than intended. Eden could smell his cologne, something subtle and clean that probably cost more than her weekly grocery budget. Thank you, she said, for the ride, for the conversation, for asking about my plants. Thank you for trusting me with instant coffee and real honesty. At her door, Callan paused. Eden? Yeah? I haven't felt this interested in tomorrow in a really long time. After he left, Eden stood in her doorway, listening to his footsteps fade down the stairwell. Then she closed the door, leaned against it and smiled, really smiled, for the first time in months. She had a date, an actual date with a man who noticed her kindness and wanted to know what made her laugh. Maybe dreams weren't as expensive as she'd thought. When was the last time someone made you remember that you deserved to be truly seen? Eden woke up to sunlight streaming through her bedroom window and the unfamiliar sensation of anticipation fluttering in her chest. For a moment she lay still, letting the memories of the night before wash over her. Had that really happened? Had she really invited a near stranger into her apartment and felt more connected to another human being than she had in years? Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text from an unknown number. Good morning. I hope you slept well. Still thinking about that conversation over terrible instant coffee. Callan Eden sat up in bed, reading the message twice, He'd texted her. He'd actually followed through. She typed and deleted 3 different responses before settling on, "Good morning. Best terrible coffee I've had in ages. Hope your presentation goes well today." His response came back almost immediately. "Much easier to focus when I have dinner plans to look forward to. Is 7 p.m. too early? Perfect, I'll pick you up at 6:45. Eden stared at her phone, reality creeping in. What was she going to wear? Where would they go? What did people even talk about on dates? The anxiety was interrupted by a knock on her door. 3 sharp raps followed by a familiar voice. "Eden Monroe Grant, I know you're awake because I can hear you pacing." Shayla May Boone never announced herself quietly. Eden opened the door to find her best friend standing in the hallway, holding 2 coffee cups from the gas station downstairs and wearing an expression of barely contained curiosity. "Shay, what are you—" "Don't even try it." Shay pushed past her into the apartment, her honey-colored box braids swinging as she moved. "Mrs. Patterson from 2A saw you come home last night with some fine man in the expensive car, and she called me at 7 a.m. to report the tea." Eden closed the door, trying not to smile. "Mrs. Patterson needs a hobby. Mrs. Patterson is providing an important community service." Shay set the coffee cups on Eden's tiny table and crossed her arms. "Now spill. Everything. And don't leave out any details about this mystery man. His name is Callan. He's a customer at the pharmacy. He gave me a ride home." "Uh-huh." Shay's raised eyebrow could have powered the building. "And? And we had coffee. At 1 in the morning. It was instant coffee. In your apartment. Shay, with a man who drives the kind of car that has heated seats and satellite radio." Shay sat down heavily in one of Eden's chairs. "Baby girl, please tell me you know this man's full name and social security number before you invited him up." Eden felt her defenses rising. "It wasn't like that. We just talked." "About what?" "Work, family, life." Eden sat across from Shay, accepting one of the coffee cups. "He lost his dad young too. He understands what it's like to carry things." Shay's expression softened slightly. "Okay, that's something. What's he do for work?" "He's a communications director at a tech company." "Tech money." Shay nodded approvingly. "That explains the car. What company?" "Vertex Solutions." Shay immediately pulled out her phone, fingers flying across the screen. After a minute of scrolling, she looked up with an expression Eden couldn't read. "What?" Eden asked. "Baby." Shay turned her phone around, showing Eden a LinkedIn profile. "Your pharmacy customer is Callan James Reese, and he's not just some communications director. He's the communications director. This company just got featured in Forbes for their growth potential." Eden stared at the professional headshot on the screen. It was definitely him, same thoughtful eyes, same careful smile, but wearing a suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent. She scrolled through his profile. University of Colorado, previous positions at major marketing firms, recommendations that used words like innovative and strategic visionary. "He's way out of your league," Shay said gently. "I'm not saying that to hurt you, I'm saying it to protect you." Eden's stomach dropped. Maybe he just wanted to be nice, maybe dinner isn't actually a date. Or maybe it is, and you need to be careful. Shay reached across the table and squeezed Eden's hand. "Look, I want you to be happy. God knows you deserve it after everything you've been through, but men like this, they don't usually date women like us unless they want something specific." "Something specific?" "A distraction, an experience, someone real to make them feel better about their corporate lives." Shay's voice was matter-of-fact, not cruel. "I've seen this before, Eden. Rich white boy meets working-class black girl, feels like he's discovered something authentic, plays house for a few months, then goes back to his real life." Eden pulled her hand away. "You don't know him, and neither do you." Shay leaned forward. "I'm not saying don't go. I'm saying go with your eyes open. Protect your heart." After Shay left, Eden sat in her apartment feeling the magic of the night before tarnish around the edges. She looked around her small space, the second-hand furniture, the makeshift planters, the stack of bills on her counter, and tried to imagine Callan's real world. Forbes features, strategic visions, board meetings and business lunches, and a salary that probably had more zeros than she'd ever seen in one place. What was she thinking? Her phone buzzed. Another text from Callan. "Hope it's okay that I asked around for restaurant recommendations. Found a place called Luna's that's supposed to have incredible pasta and a quiet atmosphere. Does that sound good?" Eden Googled Luna's. The menu didn't list prices, which meant she couldn't afford to split the check even if she wanted to. The photos showed candlelit tables and wine glasses that sparkled like small stars. She typed back, "Sounds perfect." But as she hit send, Shay's words echoed in her mind. Eyes open, heart protected. Eden walked to her closet and stared at her limited options. She had exactly one dress that could pass for nice, a simple black wrap dress she'd bought for her mother's funeral and hadn't worn since. As she pulled it from the hanger, she made a decision. She would go to dinner. She would enjoy whatever this was for exactly what it was. One evening with an interesting man who had shown her kindness on a difficult night, but she wouldn't let herself dream beyond that. Dreams, as she'd learned, were expensive in ways that had nothing to do with money. Her phone buzzed one more time, looking forward to tonight. "Thank you for saying yes." Eden stared at the message, her heart doing that complicated dance again, despite her best efforts to stay grounded. Maybe some dreams were worth the risk. At exactly 6:45 p.m., Eden heard the soft knock on her door and felt her stomach flip. She'd spent 2 hours getting ready, showering, straightening her hair into soft curls, applying makeup with the careful precision of someone who didn't wear it often. The black wrap dress fit better than she remembered, hugging her curves in a way that made her feel feminine instead of just functional. She opened the door to find Callan standing in her hallway, and the look on his face made every minute of preparation worth it. "Wow," he said softly, his eyes taking her in with genuine appreciation. "You look incredible." "Thank you." She grabbed her small purse, really just a crossbody bag she used for work, and locked her door. "You clean up pretty well yourself." He was wearing dark jeans and a button-down shirt in soft blue that brought out his eyes. Casual enough not to look overdressed in her neighborhood, but expensive enough that she could tell the difference. "Ready?" he asked, offering his arm. As they walked down the stairs, Eden felt hyper-aware of everything. The way her heels clicked against the concrete steps, the warm strength of his arm under her hand, the curious glances from neighbors sitting on their stoops in the evening heat. His car was even more impressive in daylight, sleek and silver, with an interior that smelled like leather and possibility. "So, Luna's," Eden said as he pulled out of her complex. "Have you been there before?" "Never, but my assistant swears by it." Callan glanced at her. "I wanted somewhere nice but not pretentious, somewhere we could actually talk. Your assistant helps you plan dates." "No," he said quickly, then laughed. "That came out wrong. I asked her for restaurant recommendations in general and she mentioned Luna's. I promise I don't outsource my personal life." "Good to know." Eden smiled, some of her nervousness settling, because that would be weird. The restaurant was tucked into a converted house in Virginia Highland, with string lights draped across a small patio and the soft murmur of conversation drifting through open windows. Not as intimidating as Eden had imagined, but definitely nicer than anywhere she usually went. The hostess led them to a corner table, and Eden was grateful for the dim lighting that hid her amazement at the menu prices. $34 for chicken, $42 for salmon. She'd worked an entire shift last week for less than the cost of one entree. "The pasta dishes look amazing," Callan said, studying his menu. "I'm thinking the lobster ravioli, $58. Eden found the cheapest thing on the menu, a simple spaghetti with marinara for $26, and closed her menu. "Decided already?" Callan asked. "The spaghetti marinara sounds perfect." "That's it? You're not even tempted by the seafood special?" Eden forced a smile. "I'm not really a seafood person." The waiter appeared, young, polished, the kind of person who probably made more in tips per night than Eden made in a week. He took their drink orders with practiced efficiency. "A bottle of the Chianti Classico," Callan said. "The 2018, if you have it." Eden watched the waiter nod and disappear, wondering what a bottle of wine cost in a place like this. "So," Callan said, leaning forward slightly, "tell me something I don't know about you." Eden twisted her napkin in her lap. "Like what?" "Anything. What did you want to be when you were little? What's your biggest fear? What makes you laugh until your stomach hurts?" The questions came easily from him, like he was genuinely curious about her answers. Eden found herself relaxing despite the expensive surroundings. "When I was little, I wanted to be a veterinarian," she said. "I used to rescue injured birds and try to nurse them back to health in shoeboxes." "Did it work?" "Never, but I kept trying." She laughed softly. "My mum used to say I had more hope than sense. Sounds like a good quality to me." The wine arrived, and Eden watched Callan go through the tasting ritual with the easy confidence of someone who'd done it many times. When the waiter poured her glass, she took a small sip and tried not to wince. It was good, she was sure, but wine had always tasted like expensive disappointment to her. "Your turn," she said. What did little Callan want to be? A teacher. He smiled at her surprise. 5th grade, specifically. I had this teacher, Mrs. Morrison, who made every subject feel like an adventure. She noticed when kids were struggling and found ways to help them succeed without making them feel stupid. What changed? My dad. Callan's expression dimmed. He said teaching was for people who couldn't do anything else. Said I was too smart to waste my potential on glorified babysitting. That's awful. He meant well. He wanted me to have security, success, the kind of life he'd built. Callan took a long sip of wine. But sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd ignored him. Their food arrived, and Eden tried not to stare at Callan's lobster ravioli, which looked like something from a cooking show. Her spaghetti was perfectly fine, but sitting across from his $48 entree, it felt like a declaration of everything that separated them. How is it? Callan asked. Delicious, she lied. You want to try this? He gestured to his plate. It's incredible. I'm good, thanks. They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes, and Eden found herself watching Callan's hands as he cut his ravioli. He had nice hands, careful, precise movements that spoke of someone who paid attention to details. Eden? Yeah? Can I ask you something that might be too personal? Her stomach tightened. Okay. Last night, when I found you at the bus stop, what was wrong? I mean, besides the rain and the late hour. Eden set down her fork, considering how much truth to share. It was just one of those nights when everything felt too heavy, you know? Work, bills, the same routine every day with no end in sight. Do you feel trapped? The question was so direct, so perfectly aimed at the core of her existence, that Eden felt tears prick her eyes. Sometimes, she whispered. Callan reached across the table and covered her hand with his. I know that feeling. You do? I make 6 figures, live in a high-rise apartment, drive a car that costs more than most people's annual salary. His thumb brushed across her knuckles, and most days I feel like I'm suffocating. Eden looked up at him, seeing something raw and honest in his expression. So what do we do about it? She asked. I don't know, he said softly, but maybe we figure it out together. The wine, the candlelight, the gentle pressure of his hand on hers. Suddenly the price of dinner didn't matter. The differences in their bank accounts felt irrelevant. What mattered was this connection, this feeling of being seen and understood by another human being. Callan? Yeah, I'm really glad you stopped that night. Me too. As they lingered over dessert, a tiramisu they shared, feeding each other bites across the small table, Eden felt something she hadn't experienced in years. The dangerous, wonderful sensation of falling for someone who might actually catch her. 3 weeks into whatever they were calling this, Eden found herself living in the spaces between text messages. Good morning texts that arrived like clockwork at 7:23 a.m. right after his first cup of coffee. Lunch break photos of terrible office sandwiches with captions like, "This makes your instant coffee look gourmet." Evening check-ins that started with, "How was your day?" and somehow turned into hour-long conversations about everything and nothing. Eden saved every message. She told herself it was practical, evidence that this was real, that she wasn't imagining the connection. But deep down, she knew the truth. She was collecting moments like pressed flowers, storing up proof of happiness for whatever inevitably came next. You're glowing, observed Mrs. Kimura, one of her favorite pharmacy customers, as Eden rang up her blood pressure medication. New moisturizer? Something like that. Eden smiled, scanning the prescription bottle. Her phone buzzed against her hip. Callan's name lit up the screen, and she felt that familiar flutter of anticipation. Dinner tonight? I know a place that serves actual good pasta, she typed back quickly. Can't tonight. Working until 11. Tomorrow then? I could pick you up after your shift and we could get late-night breakfast somewhere. Eden paused, thumbs hovering over her keyboard. They'd seen each other 4 times since Luna's. Coffee dates that turned into 3-hour conversations. A walk through Piedmont Park that ended with them sitting on a bench talking until sunset. A movie that neither of them paid attention to because they were too busy stealing glances at each other in the dark. Each time the connection felt deeper, more dangerous. I'd like that, she finally typed. Perfect. Can't wait to see you. Someone special? Mrs. Kimura asked with a knowing smile. Maybe, Eden admitted, then immediately felt exposed. She wasn't used to having something good to protect. The rest of her shift passed in a blur of routine tasks, punctuated by stolen moments checking her phone. Callan sent her a photo of his lunch meeting, boring men in suits around a conference table, with the caption, "Discussing synergy, send help." She laughed out loud, earning a sharp look from Mr. Hendricks. At 7 p.m., her phone rang. Callan's name on the screen. "Hey," she answered, stepping into the break room for privacy. "Hey yourself, how's the night shift treating you?" "Same as always. Mrs. Patterson came in to flirt with the delivery guy. Someone tried to return expired vitamins from 2019. The usual chaos." "Sounds riveting." She could hear the smile in his voice. "I had to sit through a 2-hour presentation about market penetration strategies." "Sexy." "Oh, incredibly." He paused. "Eden? Yeah? I miss you." The words hit her chest like a small explosion. They'd been seeing each other for 3 weeks. 3 weeks wasn't long enough to miss someone, was it? "I miss you too," she said softly. "I know that's probably weird to say." "It's not weird." "Good, because I was starting to think I was losing my mind." After they hung up, Eden floated through the rest of her shift. Even Hendricks's criticism of her register organization couldn't dampen her mood. But as she waited for the bus at 11:15 p.m., doubt began to creep in. Callan had said he'd call about breakfast plans, but her phone stayed silent. She told herself he was probably asleep. Normal people with normal jobs didn't stay up past midnight on weekdays. Still, the silence felt heavier than it should have. The next morning brought no good morning text. Eden stared at her phone over her coffee, willing it to buzz. By noon, she was checking it every 5 minutes. By evening, she was spiraling. Had she misread everything? Was 3 weeks the expiration date for whatever this was? She was scheduled to work Thursday night, but no message came about breakfast plans. No explanation for the sudden silence. At 9 p.m., alone in the pharmacy, with only the hum of fluorescent lights for company, Eden finally broke down and sent a text. "Hey, hope your day was good. Still on for breakfast tomorrow?" She stared at the message for 10 minutes before hitting send. The response came back immediately. "Shit, Eden, I'm so sorry. Work emergency, flying to Denver tonight for meetings. Should have texted earlier." Relief and disappointment warred in her chest. "No problem. Business trip, client crisis. Could be here a few days. I'll call you when I get back." "Of course, safe travels. Miss you already." Eden set her phone down and tried to focus on inventory, but her mind kept circling back to the conversation. A client crisis that required immediate travel made sense, but why hadn't he mentioned it yesterday when they talked? Why had he waited until the last minute to cancel? She was being paranoid, overthinking. This was exactly the kind of spiraling that had sabotaged her last relationship. But then Friday passed with no call. Saturday brought a single text. "Meetings running long. Denver is freezing. How are you?" She responded with details about her weekend. Laundry, grocery shopping, catching up with Shay, but got only a brief "sounds nice" in return. Sunday, nothing. Monday morning, Eden sat in Shay's nail salon, getting her cuticles pushed back and trying not to obsess over her silent phone. "He's busy," Shay said for the 3rd time, working Eden's hands with practiced efficiency. "Business trips are stressful. Don't read into it." "It's been 4 days, Shay. 4 days of basically nothing." "Baby, you knew this man for exactly 3 weeks before he left. You can't expect him to be glued to his phone texting you updates every 5 minutes. Eden knew Shay was right, but it didn't stop the anxiety gnawing at her chest. "What if," she started. "What if nothing?" Shay looked up from Eden's nails. "What if you just let this be what it is instead of borrowing trouble?" That evening, as Eden was getting ready for work, her phone finally rang. "Hey." Callan's voice sounded tired. "Sorry I've been MIA. This trip has been insane." "It's okay," Eden said, though it wasn't really. "How are the meetings going?" "Finally wrapping up. I should be back Wednesday evening." "That's good." "Eden?" His voice softened. "Are you okay? You sound different." She wanted to tell him about the anxiety, the way his silence had made her question everything, but that felt too needy, too much for whatever they were. "Just tired," she said instead. "I'll make it up to you when I get back, okay? Proper dinner, not at some corporate chain." "Okay. I should go. Early morning tomorrow. But I wanted to hear your voice." After they hung up, Eden stared at herself in her bathroom mirror. The woman looking back had the same hopeful, nervous expression she'd worn 3 weeks ago. Still waiting. Still wondering if she was enough to hold someone's attention. Wednesday couldn't come fast enough. But even as she counted down the hours until his return, a small voice in the back of her mind whispered the question she didn't want to ask. If this was real, why did his absence feel like abandonment? Have you ever felt like you were falling in love with someone's potential instead of their presence? Wednesday arrived with the weight of expectation hanging over Eden like Atlanta humidity. She'd worked herself into a state of nervous energy, cleaning her already spotless apartment twice and changing outfits 3 times before settling on jeans and a soft green sweater that Shay had declared approachable but not desperate. Callan's plane was supposed to land at 6:30 p.m. He'd promised to call when he got home and settled. By 9 p.m. Eden's phone remained silent. By 10 p.m. she was pacing her small living room, creating elaborate explanations for the delay. Flight delays, lost luggage, traffic from the airport. At 10:47 p.m. she broke down and sent a text. Hope you made it back safely. No response. At 11:15 p.m. she opened Instagram, something she rarely did, and immediately regretted it. There, posted 3 hours ago, was a story from someone named Laura Jensen ATL. A photo of an upscale bar with expensive cocktails, tagged with the location rooftop at Ponce City Market. In the background, barely visible but unmistakably recognizable, was Callan. Eden's hands shook as she screenshot the image, zooming in to make sure she wasn't imagining things. Same brown hair, same profile, same blue button-down shirt he'd been wearing in the airport selfie he'd sent that morning. He was back. He was in Atlanta, and he was at a trendy rooftop bar instead of calling her. Eden sat heavily on her couch, staring at the image until her eyes blurred. The rational part of her mind offered explanations. Work dinner, client entertainment, obligation he couldn't get out of. But the wounded part, the part that had been waiting by her phone for 4 days, whispered something darker. Maybe Shay had been right from the beginning. Thursday morning brought no explanation, no apology, no acknowledgement that he'd been back in the city and available to socialize, just not with her. Eden went through her day in a fog, distracted during her therapy session, short with customers, counting down hours until she could hide in her apartment and nurse her growing certainty that she'd been naive. At 3 p.m., her phone finally rang. "Hey," Callan said, his voice bright with false energy. "Sorry about last night. Got pulled into this work thing right from the airport. You know how it is." "No," Eden said quietly. "I don't know how it is." A pause. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I don't know what it's like to tell someone you'll call them and then not do it. I don't know what it's like to go out drinking instead of following through on plans." "Eden, what are you talking about?" She could hear the careful confusion in his voice, the tone people used when they were deciding how much truth they could get away with. "Ponce City Market. Last night. Instagram story." The silence stretched long enough that Eden knew she'd caught him. "How did you—" He stopped himself. "Look, it wasn't what it looked like." "What did it look like?" "I know you're upset. What did it look like, Callan?" Another pause. "Like I was out having drinks when I said I'd call you. Because that's exactly what you were doing." "Eden, please, let me explain." "I'm listening." "My colleague from Denver was in town for one night. She wanted to grab drinks to debrief about the trip. It was work-related." "She?" "Laura, my counterpart at the Denver office. We've worked together for 2 years." Eden closed her eyes, picturing the Instagram account. Laura Jensen ATL. Professional headshots mixed with carefully curated lifestyle photos. Blonde, polished, the kind of woman who belonged in upscale bars and expensive restaurants. "You could have texted me," Eden said. "You could have said you'd call later." "You're right. I should have. I was exhausted, and it was a last-minute thing, and I didn't think—" "You didn't think I'd find out." "That's not—" He stopped. "That's not what I meant, but it's what happened." Eden heard him sigh, could picture him running his hand through his hair the way he did when he was frustrated. "Can I see you tonight?" he asked. "Can we talk about this in person?" "I'm working." "Tomorrow, then." Eden stared at the wall of her apartment, at the single framed photo of her and her mother taken the Christmas before she died. Her mother's smile was radiant, full of hope for a future she wouldn't live to see. "Eden, are you there?" "I'm here." "Tomorrow?" "I don't know, Callan." "What do you mean you don't know?" "I mean, I need to think about what this is. What we're doing. We're dating. We're getting to know each other. Are we?" Eden interrupted. "Because from where I'm sitting, it feels like you're fitting me into the spaces between your real life. That's not fair, isn't it?" Eden's voice remained calm, but her chest felt like it was caving in. 4 days of barely talking to me, then drinks with your beautiful colleague the night you get back. When exactly was I supposed to fit into your schedule? Laura isn't. This isn't about her. "No," Eden said softly. "It's about me. It's about the fact that I spent 4 days missing someone who apparently didn't miss me enough to send more than 3 text messages. I was working, Eden. I was in meetings from 7 a.m. to midnight every day. But you weren't too busy to grab drinks. The silence that followed felt final, like the moment before a door slams shut. "I'm going to hang up now," Eden said. "Eden, wait. I'm going to hang up, and I'm going to think about whether I want to keep doing this." "Keep doing what?" "Feeling like I'm auditioning for a place in your life." She ended the call before he could respond. For the next hour, Eden sat in her apartment as darkness fell outside her windows. Her phone buzzed with incoming texts, first apologetic, then explanatory, then increasingly desperate, but she didn't read them. Instead, she thought about the woman in the Instagram story, Laura Jensen, with her professional success and her easy access to Callan's time. Laura Jensen, who didn't have to wait for good morning texts or wonder if she was worth a phone call. Laura Jensen, who belonged in his world in a way Eden never would. At 8 p.m., Shay knocked on her door, took one look at Eden's face, and pulled her into a fierce hug. "What did he do?" Shay asked. Eden told her everything. The silence, the Instagram discovery, the conversation that felt like an ending. "Baby," Shay said when she finished, "you know what this is, right?" "What?" "This is him showing you who he is, and you get to decide if that's someone you want to keep giving your heart to." Eden looked at her phone, now silent after the flurry of unanswered messages. For the first time since that rainy night 3 weeks ago, she wondered if some chances weren't worth taking after all. 5 days of silence stretched between them, like an ocean Eden couldn't figure out how to cross. She'd blocked his number Thursday night in a moment of self-preservation, then unblocked it Friday morning in a moment of weakness, then blocked it again Friday afternoon when the temptation to text him became unbearable. The pharmacy felt different now. Every customer who walked through the door made her heart skip, thinking it might be him, but Callan didn't come. "You're doing that thing again," Shay observed Sunday afternoon as they sat in Eden's living room, sharing a bag of chips and watching Love Island reruns. "What thing?" "That thing where you disappear inside your own head and convince yourself you're being dramatic." Eden pulled a throw pillow into her lap, hugging it like armor. "Maybe I am being dramatic, or maybe you're protecting yourself from a man who was keeping you on the back burner while he figured out his real options." "We don't know that's what he was doing." Shay muted the TV and turned to face her fully. "Baby, let me ask you something. In the 3 weeks you were seeing him, did he ever take you anywhere during peak dating hours, like Friday or Saturday night?" Eden opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. Coffee dates on Tuesday afternoons, dinner on a Wednesday, the movie on a Thursday. "Weekend nights are for people who matter," Shay said gently. "And work colleagues don't get priority over women you're supposedly falling for." "Maybe he really was just—" "Stop!" Shay's voice was firm but loving. "Stop making excuses for someone who didn't make you a priority." Eden's phone buzzed from its place on the coffee table. Both women looked at it. "Different number," Eden said, recognizing the unfamiliar digits. "This is Callan. I know you blocked my number. I know you probably don't want to hear from me. But I can't stop thinking about our conversation, and I need you to know that you were right." Eden stared at the message, her heart doing that familiar, complicated dance. "You were right about everything. I was fitting you into spaces between my real life, and that was selfish and unfair. You deserve so much better than that." Another message appeared. "I don't expect you to forgive me or want to see me again. I just needed you to know that losing you has made me realize how much I was taking for granted." "What's he saying?" Shay asked. Eden handed her the phone. Shay read the messages, her expression carefully neutral. She said finally. What?" "Nothing. It's just, that's either genuine self-awareness or really good manipulation. How can you tell the difference?" "You can't. That's the problem." Eden's phone buzzed again. "I know actions matter more than words. So I'm going to stop bothering you now, but if you ever want to talk, I'll be here. You made me remember what it felt like to be human instead of just productive." "Okay," Shay said, reading over Eden's shoulder. "That last part is either beautiful or calculated emotional warfare." Eden took her phone back, reading the messages again. There was something different about them, less polished than his usual texts, more raw. "What are you thinking?" Shay asked. "I'm thinking I don't know how to tell the difference between someone who's genuinely sorry and someone who's just sorry they got caught." "Smart girl." They sat in silence for a few minutes, the muted TV casting blue light across the room. "Can I ask you something?" Eden said finally. "Always. Do you think I'm making too big a deal out of this? Like, maybe people in his world just operate differently, and I'm being too sensitive?" Shay turned to face her completely. "Eden Monroe Grant, let me tell you something my grandmother told me when I was 16 and crying over some boy who treated me like an option. What? She said, baby girl, the right person will never make you wonder where you stand. They'll make it clear from day one that you matter. Shay reached over and squeezed Eden's hand. You spent 4 days wondering if you mattered to this man. That tells you everything you need to know. But what if nothing? You felt confused and hurt and uncertain because the situation was confusing and hurtful and uncertain. Trust your gut. Eden looked down at her phone, at the messages that felt like an apology and a goodbye wrapped together. I miss him, she admitted quietly. I know you do. I miss the way he listened to me, the way he made me feel interesting. You are interesting, with or without him. I miss having someone to text good morning to. Text me. I'll send you inappropriate memes in response. Despite everything, Eden smiled. It's not the same. No, Shay agreed. It's not, but it's real, and it's consistent, and it doesn't make you question your worth. Monday morning arrived grey and drizzly, matching Eden's mood perfectly. She dragged herself through her opening shift, going through the motions of customer service while her mind replayed every moment with Callan, looking for signs she'd missed. At 2 p.m. during her lunch break, she was sitting in her car in the pharmacy parking lot when she saw him. Callan stood at the edge of the lot, hands in his pockets, looking uncertain in a way she'd never seen before. He wasn't approaching the building, just waiting. Their eyes met through her windshield, and Eden felt her breath catch. He raised one hand in a small wave, his expression hopeful and hesitant. Then he pointed to the passenger seat of his car, which was parked 3 spaces away, and mouthed the word, "Talk." Eden sat frozen, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it over the radio. Part of her wanted to march over there and demand explanations. Part of her wanted to drive away and never look back. Instead, she found herself walking toward his car on unsteady legs. "Hi," he said softly as she approached. "Hi, thank you for not driving away." Eden slid into the passenger seat, leaving the door open, a small assertion of control. "I probably should have, probably." He turned to face her, and she could see exhaustion in the lines around his eyes. "I've been coming here every day since Thursday hoping to see you." "Why?" "Because I needed to apologize in person, because text messages felt cowardly after what I did." "What exactly did you do, Callan?" He was quiet for a long moment, staring at his hands on the steering wheel. "I treated you like you were disposable," he said finally. "I treated you like someone I could pick up and put down whenever it was convenient for me." "That's not—" "It is." He looked at her directly. "And the worst part is that I didn't even realize I was doing it until you called me out." Eden felt tears prick her eyes. "Why? Why what? Why did you treat me that way? Was I not enough somehow?" "Oh, Eden." His voice broke slightly. "You were everything. That was the problem. I don't understand. You made me feel things I wasn't prepared to feel. You made me want to be different, better. And instead of rising to meet that, I sabotaged it." They sat in silence, the weight of honesty settling between them. "Where does that leave us?" Eden asked finally. Callan looked at her with something that might have been love and definitely looked like loss. "I think," he said slowly, "it leaves us with me figuring out how to be worthy of someone like you, and you deciding if you want to wait around while I do. Is there a difference between someone who's genuinely changing and someone who's just saying the right words?" Eden spent the next week living in the space between forgiveness and self-preservation, and it felt like trying to breathe underwater. Callan didn't contact her after their parking lot conversation. True to his word, he was giving her space to decide, which somehow made everything harder. When someone was pushing, you could push back. When someone was waiting, you had to choose. "You're overthinking this," Shay said Thursday evening as they sat on Eden's fire escape, sharing a bottle of cheap wine and watching the sunset paint Atlanta's skyline in shades of gold and regret. "Am I?" "Yes. The question isn't complicated. Do you want to be with someone who makes you feel insecure, or do you want to be with someone who makes you feel valued? But what if he's learned? What if he really means it this time?" Shay took a long sip of wine. "Baby, let me tell you about Marcus." Eden settled back against the railing. She'd heard about Marcus, Shay's ex from 2 years ago, who had mastered the art of the perfect apology. "Marcus could apologize better than anyone I've ever met. He had this way of taking responsibility that made you feel like he really understood what he'd done wrong. And every time I believed him. Every time I thought, this is it. This is when he changes. What happened? He didn't change. He just got better at apologizing." Shay looked at Eden seriously. The pattern stayed the same. The hurt stayed the same. Only the excuses got prettier. Eden stared out at the city, at all the lit windows representing lives she'd never know, choices she'd never have to make. But what if Callan is different? Then he'll prove it over time, not with words, but with actions, consistently. Friday morning brought an unexpected delivery to the pharmacy. Eden was restocking the vitamin aisle when Mr. Hendricks called her to the front. "Someone sent you flowers," he said, his tone suggesting this was somehow unprofessional. On the counter sat a simple arrangement, not the elaborate dozen roses Eden might have expected, but a small bouquet of sunflowers mixed with eucalyptus. Bright, cheerful, unpretentious. The card read, "For someone who brings light to ordinary moments. No expectations, just gratitude." Eden touched one of the soft yellow petals, her chest tightening with familiar longing. "Secret admirer?" asked Teresa, the evening pharmacist who was coming in early. "Something like that." Eden took the flowers to the break room, where they sat on the small table like a question she wasn't ready to answer. Her phone buzzed during her lunch break. "I hope the flowers weren't too much. I just wanted you to know I was thinking about you." She stared at the message for 10 minutes before responding, "They're beautiful, thank you. How are you doing?" Such a simple question, but loaded with everything they weren't saying. "I'm okay. Confused, but okay. That's fair. Take all the time you need." "Callan." "Yeah? Why sunflowers?" "Because they turn toward the sun, because they're strong and bright and they grow tall even in difficult soil. Reminded me of someone I know." Eden set her phone down and buried her face in her hands. This was exactly what Shay had warned her about, the beautiful words that made you forget the ugly patterns. But sitting there in the pharmacy break room, surrounded by the scent of sunflowers, Eden realized something important. She wasn't the same person who had started this relationship 6 weeks ago. 6 weeks ago, she would have melted at the gesture. She would have called him immediately, forgiven everything and fallen back into the pattern of hoping he would choose her. Now, she understood something she'd never learned before. Love wasn't supposed to feel like an audition. Saturday evening, Eden made a decision. She drove to Callan's apartment building, a sleek high-rise in Midtown that she'd never seen, but had looked up online during one of her weaker moments. The lobby was all marble and glass, the kind of place where she felt immediately out of place in her jeans and Target sweater. "I'm here to see Callan Reese," she told the concierge, a polished woman who looked like she'd never shopped at a discount store in her life. "Name?" "Eden Grant." The woman made a call, spoke quietly, then hung up with a smile. "He'll be right down." Eden waited by the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching traffic move through the city below. When the elevator opened and Callan stepped out, her heart did that familiar skip, but it felt different now. Less desperate, more deliberate. "Eden." His face lit up with surprise and something that looked like hope. "I wasn't expecting—" "I need to say something," she interrupted. "Okay." He moved closer, and she caught that familiar scent of his cologne. "Do you want to go upstairs? We could—" "No. Here is fine." They stood in the marble lobby, surrounded by the quiet luxury of his world, and Eden found her voice. "I've been thinking about what you said, about figuring out how to be worthy of someone like me." Callan nodded, his expression careful. "The thing is," Eden continued, "I don't need you to become worthy of me. I need you to see that I was already worthy of your honesty and consistency and respect. You were, you are, but you didn't treat me that way. I know. You treated me like I was lucky to have your attention instead of recognizing that you were lucky to have mine." Callan's face crumpled slightly. "You're right. I know I'm right." Eden's voice was steady, sure. "And that's why I can't do this anymore. Eden, I can't be with someone who has to learn how to value me. I can't be in a relationship where I'm constantly wondering if I matter enough to deserve a phone call or honesty about where you are and who you're with. I understand that you're scared." "I'm not scared," Eden said firmly. "I'm clear. For the first time in my life, I'm completely clear about what I deserve." Callan stared at her, and she could see him processing her words, maybe realizing that this wasn't a negotiation. "What if I could prove that I've changed?" he asked quietly. "Then I hope you'll prove it to the next woman you meet, someone who doesn't have to wonder if she's enough for you." Eden turned to leave, then stopped and faced him one more time. "The flowers were beautiful," she said, "but you know what would have been better? Not needing them in the first place." She walked out of the marble lobby, out of the building, out of the gravitational pull of someone else's potential, and into the Atlanta evening. Her phone rang before she reached her car. "How did it go?" Shay's voice was gentle. "It went exactly how it needed to go." "Are you okay?" Eden sat in her car, looking up at the building where Callan lived his complicated life, and felt something she hadn't experienced in months. Peace. "Yeah," she said, surprising herself. I think I really am. As she drove home through the city she'd lived in her whole life, Eden realized that somewhere between the pharmacy and the marble lobby, she'd stopped waiting for someone else to see her value. She'd found it herself, and that was worth more than all the perfect apologies in the world. 2 months later, Eden stood at the same bus stop where everything had started, but this time she wasn't crying. This time she was waiting. The evening shift at Piedmont Community College had ended an hour ago, her first day as a part-time student in their social work program. After years of putting dreams on layaway, she'd finally figured out how to pay for them. Night classes, financial aid, and the kind of determination that came from knowing exactly who you wanted to become. The October air carried the promise of winter, and Eden pulled her new jacket closer. Not expensive, but warm and chosen by someone who had learned to value comfort over appearance, practicality over other people's expectations. Her phone buzzed with a text from Shay. How was the first class? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Details. Eden smiled, typing back. Professor said I asked the best questions in the group. I think I found my place. I'm proud of you, baby girl. Mom would be too. The response brought tears to Eden's eyes. Good tears, the kind that came from being seen and celebrated by someone who mattered. She was putting her phone away when she heard the car. Not just any car, that car. The silver sedan with the quiet engine and the heated seats that had once felt like salvation on a rainy night. Eden's heart stuttered, then settled. She didn't run. She didn't hide. She simply stood there, curious about what this moment would bring. The passenger window rolled down, and Callan's face appeared. He looked different, thinner, more tired, but somehow more real than she remembered. Eden? His voice was cautious, respectful of the space between them. Hi, Callan. I didn't know you'd be here. I was just driving, and I saw you, and... It's okay, Eden said gently. We can talk. He parked and got out of the car, approaching slowly like someone who understood that proximity was earned, not assumed. You look good, he said. Different. Happy. Thank you, I am happy. They stood a few feet apart, two people who had shared intimacy and hurt and growth, now meeting as the changed versions of themselves. I heard you started college, Callan said. Shay mentioned it when I ran into her at the coffee shop on Ponce. You talked to Shay? Briefly. She was protective, as she should be. He smiled ruefully. She made it very clear that asking about you was not the same as being entitled to information about you. Smart woman. The smartest. She also said you were thriving. Eden studied his face, looking for the manipulation she'd learned to recognize, but finding only genuine curiosity and something that looked like pride. I am thriving, she said. It took me a while to understand what that felt like. I'm glad. You deserve that. A comfortable silence settled between them, the kind that existed between people who had nothing left to prove to each other. Can I ask you something? Eden said. Anything. What are you doing here? Really? It's almost midnight, and this isn't on your way home from anywhere you'd normally be. Callan looked down at his hands, then back at her. I come here sometimes, when I can't sleep, when I need to remember. Remember what? The night I met someone who changed my life. The night I learned the difference between being seen and being known. Eden felt her chest tighten, but not with the old longing, with compassion for the man who was still learning how to be honest with himself. Callan, I'm not telling you this because I want something, he said quickly. I'm telling you because I think you should know the impact you had, the way you loved me, even briefly, showed me what I was missing in every other relationship I'd ever had. And I've been working on becoming someone worthy of that kind of love, not for you, not to win you back, but because I realized I'd been sleepwalking through my life. Eden nodded slowly. That's good. That's important work. I quit my job 3 weeks ago. The statement hung in the air between them, surprising in its simplicity. You did? I'm starting my own consulting firm, helping small businesses with their communication strategies, but doing it in a way that actually helps instead of just generating profit. He laughed softly. Turns out, there was a teacher hiding inside the corporate drone all along. That's wonderful. It's terrifying and uncertain, and the first thing I've done in years that feels like choice instead of obligation. Eden smiled, remembering the man who had sat in her tiny kitchen, talking about feeling trapped by his own success. I'm proud of you, she said, and meant it. Thank you. He paused. Eden? Yeah? I need you to know that you were right. About everything. About the way I treated you. About the way I prioritized my comfort over your feelings. About the fact that you deserved better from the very beginning. I know I was right. and I need you to know that losing you was the best thing that could have happened to me. Not because I didn't love you, but because I wasn't capable of loving you the way you deserved." Eden felt tears prick her eyes, not from sadness, but from the rare gift of being truly understood by someone who had once misunderstood her completely. "I loved you too," she said softly. "I loved the potential I saw in you, the glimpses of who you could be when you let your guard down. But you loved yourself more. Eventually, yes, I finally loved myself more." The bus appeared in the distance, its headlights cutting through the darkness. "That's me," Eden said. "Of course." Callan stepped back, giving her space to move toward the stop. "Eden," she turned back, "I hope someday you find someone who sees your worth from day one, someone who doesn't have to learn how to treasure you." "I already found her," Eden said with a smile. "Her. Me. I found me." As the bus pulled up and Eden climbed the steps, she felt Callan's eyes on her but didn't turn around. This wasn't a movie moment requiring dramatic gestures or profound farewells. This was simply two people who had been part of each other's growth stories, acknowledging that sometimes love meant letting go completely. As the bus pulled away, Eden caught a glimpse of Callan in the side mirror, standing alone under the streetlight where they'd first met. He wasn't looking after the bus with longing. He was simply standing there, present with whatever he was feeling, and somehow that felt like the most honest thing he'd ever done. Eden settled into her seat, pulled out her social work textbook, and began reading about advocacy strategies for underserved populations. She had work to do, dreams to build, a life to live that belonged entirely to her. And for the first time since that rainy night months ago, Eden Monroe Grant knew exactly where she was going. What would it feel like to meet your past self and realize you've become everything you needed to be? 2 years later, the morning sun streamed through the windows of the small office Eden shared with 3 other social workers at the Atlanta Family Support Center, casting golden rectangles across her desk where case files sat next to a coffee mug that read, "World's Okayest Social Worker," a gift from Shay that made her smile every time she used it. Eden leaned back in her chair, reviewing her notes from yesterday's home visit with the Morrison family. 3 kids under 10, a mother working 2 jobs, a father trying to rebuild after addiction, the kind of complex, heartbreaking, beautiful situation that reminded her daily why she'd chosen this work. Her phone buzzed with a text from her supervisor. "Great job with the Morrison case. Your report was thorough and compassionate. Keep it up." 2 years out of graduate school, and Eden still felt a thrill when she received recognition for work that felt like calling rather than obligation. "Someone's looking pleased with herself," observed Marcus Chen, no relation to the Dr. Chen from her old pharmacy days, as he settled into the desk across from her with his own oversized coffee mug. "Morrison family got approved for emergency housing assistance," Eden said, unable to keep the satisfaction out of her voice. "That's huge. How long were they on the waiting list?" 4 months. Sometimes the system actually works." Marcus smiled. "Look at you, still believing in miracles." "Someone has to." They worked in comfortable silence for an hour, Eden drafting follow-up letters and scheduling visits, when her phone rang with an unknown local number. "Eden Grant, Atlanta Family Support." "Ms. Grant, this is Rebecca Torres from Channel 5 News. We're doing a feature story on social workers making a difference in the community, and your name came up multiple times in our research." Eden felt her stomach flutter. "I'm sorry, what?" "We'd like to interview you about your work with families transitioning out of homelessness. Would you be available this afternoon?" After she hung up, Eden sat staring at her phone, processing the surreal turn her Tuesday morning had taken. "Good news or bad news?" Marcus asked. "I think good news. Maybe. A news station wants to interview me." "Eden, that's amazing. What for?" As she explained, Eden felt a familiar sensation, the same mixture of disbelief and quiet pride she'd experienced 2 years ago when she'd walked across the stage to receive her master's degree, when she'd landed this job, when she'd moved into her own 1-bedroom apartment with windows that faced east and caught the morning light. The sensation of a life built by her own choices, brick by brick. At lunch, she called Shay from the small park across from her office building. "My best friend is about to be on TV," Shay shrieked into the phone. "I'm calling in sick to work so I can watch." "It's just a local news segment. It's recognition for the work you do, the life you've built, the woman you became." Shay's voice softened. "Your mama would be so proud, Eden. I think about that sometimes, what she'd think of who I am now. She'd think you grew up to be exactly who you were meant to be." That afternoon, as Eden sat across from the reporter in the center's conference room, she found herself thinking about journeys, not just her own, but the families she worked with, people who had lost everything and were rebuilding with courage she witnessed daily. "What drew you to this work?" the reporter asked. "I think I was drawn to it because I understand what it feels like to feel invisible," Eden said, speaking directly to the camera. "I know what it's like to be someone the world overlooks, and I know how much it means when someone finally sees you." "And what would you say to other young people considering social work?" Eden thought for a moment, then smiled. "I'd say that if you're looking for a career that pays well and offers predictable outcomes, this probably isn't it. But if you're looking for work that reminds you every day what humans are capable of when someone believes in them, there's nothing like it." The interview aired at 6 p.m. Eden watched from her apartment, curled up on the couch she'd bought herself. Nothing fancy, just comfortable and chosen by someone who understood the difference between needing something and wanting it. Her phone buzzed throughout the segment. Messages from colleagues, from clients' families, from her graduate school professors, and one message from a number she hadn't seen in 2 years. "Saw you on the news. I'm so proud of the incredible woman you've become. You're changing lives every day." Eden stared at the message for a long moment, feeling nothing but a gentle warmth for the person who had once been part of her story. She typed back, "Thank you. I hope you're well." His response came quickly. "I am. Really am. Thank you for helping me learn how to be." She set her phone aside and returned to the news, where they were already moving on to weather and sports. But Eden's mind lingered on the strange, beautiful circularity of life. 2 years ago, she'd been a woman crying at a bus stop, feeling invisible and worthless. Tonight, she was a professional being recognized for work that mattered, living in a space she'd created, surrounded by relationships built on mutual respect and genuine care. The transformation hadn't happened overnight. It had been built through 1,000 small choices, enrolling in night classes despite exhaustion, studying for exams after long shifts, believing she deserved more even when believing felt impossible. It had been built through learning to love herself the way she'd always loved others, unconditionally, consistently, without requiring perfection. Her phone buzzed one more time. Shay sending a screenshot of the news segment with the caption, "That's my best friend changing the world one family at a time." Eden smiled, looking around her small apartment, the plants thriving on every surface, the books stacked in neat piles because she still couldn't afford proper shelves, but no longer saw that as a limitation. The framed photo of her and her mother next to a newer one of her and Shay at Eden's graduation. She thought about the Morrison children, who would sleep in a stable home tonight because someone had advocated for them. She thought about all the families she'd worked with over the past 2 years, all the small victories and necessary defeats that had shaped her into someone she barely recognized from that rainy night. She thought about love, not the desperate audition-based version she'd once accepted, but the steady, respectful kind she'd learned to require. The kind that would come when she was ready, from someone who saw her worth immediately and consistently. But mostly, she thought about tomorrow, about the cases waiting on her desk, the families who needed someone to believe in their capacity for change, the work that filled her with purpose instead of just paying her bills. Eden Monroe Grant had become the woman she'd always had the potential to be, not because someone else had seen it in her, but because she'd finally learned to see it in herself. And that, she realized as she turned off the TV and prepared for another day of changing the world in small, meaningful ways, was the only love story that really mattered. The one where she'd learned to love herself enough to build a life worthy of her dreams. 2 years from now, who will you have become? What love story will you be living with yourself? Your participation in the channel is very important. Please leave your opinion in the comments. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a like and comment your thoughts. Your participation is very important to us. See you next time.